I first met Bash at the AM campus in 2019 while he was a data science fellow at Esquelabs. Back then, I was impressed with Bash's passion for data and social good, two things we have in common. Today, Bash is a machine learning engineer, and he's also stayed with Esquelabs as a team lead and instructor. Welcome to the first of our data ethics conversations in 2021. The following is my conversation with Albert Yumol, better known as Bash. In this conversation, we talk about Bash's projects, advocacies, and activism as he strives to elevate the state of data science education and also the use of data for social impact. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, and share this podcast. Please also connect with us on Twitter at EthicsPH and on LinkedIn at DataEthicsPH. And now my conversation with Bash Yumol.
Yeah. So Bash, you said you wanted to, share a particular topic or do a little bit of demo. So, take it away. What you want to talk about.
Okay, I prepared some slides to show you some of the things that I do, but in a more general sense muna, I can talk about how I envision using technology in service of social impact and social good problems. Basically, the tagline na ginagamit ko sa line of work ko ngayon, technology for the people. So bringing technology talaga sa grassroots levels na stakeholder. So, ang mundo kasi natin ngayon, Doc, no, parang nagta-transition na tayo sa fourth industrial revolution. So, ang dami ng pagbabago dun sa ways of doing work natin as compared to a decade ago. And so, ang daming positive impacts na naitulong sa mga businesses, sa mga operations ng companies, even on a more personal level, the way we engage with technologies nagiging mas personal na talaga. And over the years, we saw that massive talaga improvements ng technology with regards to the use of our data. Yung napansin ko na data, nung tinitingnan ko yung share ng AI jobs sa United States noong 2019, talagang parami yung nape-penetrate ng artificial intelligence, ng data science, ng machine learning sa mga businesses. And kapag tinignan natin yung graph, no, if you want to look at it, na network theory approach, ito yung itsura niya kung gaano kadami yung mga tools na gumagamit, yung mga industries na gumagamit ng data science tools, and paano ito, yung commonalities among industries, anong mga tools yung ginagamit nila. So this is very interesting. But yung idea ko kasi ng technology is a dialectical tool. It can be used for good, and it can also be used for the not so good thing. So dialectic or two perspectives. So maraming issues kagaya ng ransomwares nakikita natin. Hindi pa siya masyadong laganap sa Pilipinas, pero yung concept ng identity theft, malaking problema na siya abroad. Yung mga phishing technologies na ina-exploit yung system to steal money from people mula dun sa data nila, so pinagkakitaan nila na sa business. Yung ginagamit nila na currency, yung bitcoins, no? I remember when I was younger and I was in university pa doing research, yung bitcoins ang ginagamit ko yung mga computers namin sa lab, in-experiment pa namin yung concept ng cryptocurrency. Tapos hindi pa malaki to before. Mababa lang siya, parang 1 Bitcoin dati 2013 yata is around 26,000 pesos lang. And ito na yung naging currency nung mga transactions nga na sabi ko kanina, kagaya nung sa ransomware. Other effects, no, ng our problems in terms of exploiting data would be the privacy of people in terms of the apps that they use. So yung mga nauso sa Facebook na mga face app na hindi natin alam kung saan ginagamit yung mga data na kinukuha sa atin on a personal level, like mga pictures natin or mga proxy data na nakukuha sa cellphone natin, like location and things like that. So problems pa sa mga ganitong types of development, yung concept ng bias na nade-develop lang yung mga ganitong system with a particular like segment of people na mag-benefit. So hindi siya ganun ka-inclusive yung technology na ginagawa. And it can also be used to like disenfranchise people. For example, some products in China na base sa facial recognition, for example, yung WeChat nila na ginagamit nila as a service yung facial recognition to access social services. So ang problem kapag nagpakita sila ng dissent through rallies, so malaking chance na ma-disenfranchise sila sa paggamit ng system na very centralized yung system nila na pwede kang pagbawalan na maka-access ng bank assets mo and so on. So isa pa dun sa negative na nakikita ko sa news ngayon about artificial intelligence, so mga headbands na nakaka-detect ng brain waves ng mga students, so they can monitor kung attentive ba yung student sa class or so on. Parang nagiging bumabalik yung lessons from George Orwell noong 1984. So ting naging motivation ko sa data science for social good Parang nakikita ko na marami siyang positive effects, pero on one side kailangan din nating ma-recognize na hindi lang siya puro positive, may mga negative sides din siya na kailangan ding aralin at tingnan. So maraming technologies, kunyari kapag nag-upload ako ng image ko sa Facebook or other social media platform, naglagyan ko muna siya ng noise para kapag gagamitin nila sa kung saan mang algorithms na paano nila, hindi ako mapo-profile basta-basta. Yung pinakauna kong inspiration kung bakit nung bata kasi ako, gusto ko talaga maging scientist kasi natutuwa ako dun sa mga napapanood ko sa TV, yung sineskwela, na-inspire ako dun sa mga experiments nila. So pinangarap ko talaga maging scientist nung bata ako, gawa ng mga promotions nung nasa TV. So napaka-important for me yung science communication talaga Parang if we want to produce technologists, engineers, scientists in the Philippines, kailangan maayos yung how we communicate science and technology sa kabataan. Luckily, I was able to pursue physics as an undergrad. And luckily then, yung advisor ko na napunta sa akin, or yung pumili sa akin sa college, ay activist. So yung mga ginagawa namin before, I was in the instrumentation physics laboratory. So yung inaaral namin before, we are finding patterns or like solving relevant problems using physics. Pero hindi yung physics na parang akala natin nung high school na ang physics ay very Newtonian physics na force is equal to mass times acceleration. Yung physics na inaaral ko in particular before ay complex systems. So we are applying network theory, agent-based modeling, time series analytics, and digital signal processing to solve real-world problems. So yung mga problems na sinasolve ng laboratory namin before, traffic, prediction ng stock market. In particular, noong 2013, yung advisor ko, naisip niya na malaking issue ng 2013 yung PDAF, yung question ng pork barrel sa Pilipinas nung panahon ni Noynoy. So ang naisip na gawin ng mga groupmates ay i-map yung network ng mga NGOs sa Philippines, tapos tingnan yung funding na nakukuha sa kanila in relation to the legislators and senators. So we were able to show na maraming mga nodes. Yung mga nodes dito nire-represent yung isang NGO or yung isang legislator. So tapos yung mga edges or yung mga lines na nagko-connect dun sa mga dots, and nire-represent niya yung interaction between them. Also yung number ng interactions nila. So we were able to justify na maraming mga nodes pala dun sa natin sa PDAF before na non-existent yung names. So hindi nag-exist pero ang dami mga transactions na nakukuha. Aside from that, nakita namin na may tatlong main hubs. So mga hubs, doon nagko-concentrate yung maraming interactions. Nakita namin na yung tatlong senators before, si Enrile, si Revilla, tsaka si Estrada, sila talaga yung malaking mga chunk dito. So yung advisor ko, lagi siya na...
So which one here is Enrile and Estrada?
Ibang plot yun.
Okay, got it.
Pag zoom natin ito, makikita yan doon. So, yung advisor ko nun, parang hindi na siya madalas sa school. Parang lagi siya na pinapatawag sa Congress kasi ginagamit itong result ng research namin before para i-justify kung bakit ngayon, may kaso yung mga tatlong senators na yan previously. So, pinagpatuloy namin yung ganong type of research, and ako rin personally, invested ako sa ganong research because when I was in college, medyo naging focus ko din yung activism. So I was a member of Agham Youth. So mga organization siya ng young scientists. Tapos ang nakita namin na problem, nag-analyze kami ng problems ng accessibility ng education na marami pa rin talaga yung kulang yung capacity to enter even state colleges. So we did the research before, that was in 2016, 2017. So napansin namin na ang kailangan lang pala na budget para maging free tuition ng state universities and colleges ay 8.3 billion pesos. So parang kinumpare namin siya sa magkano ba yung expenditures ng government natin sa other agencies like debt servicing o pambayad utang or like military services, maabot around 500 billion yung mga ganong segments. So parang masabi namin 8.3 billion pesos is parang barya lang compared doon. So nagamit namin siya na justification noong 2017. And again, we went to the Congress to lobby it, na sabihin sa kanila to support using data, using numbers na feasible yung free education. And noong 2017 nga, ayun, na-put into law. Buti pumayag si Duterte before na pirmahan yung free education bill natin. So yung mga state universities and colleges natin, nakaka-enjoy ngayon yung mga students ng free tuition. Other research na ginagawa ko before for social impact problem. I remember 2015 pumunta si Pope sa Pilipinas. So nung pagpunta ni Pope sa Pilipinas, nag-anticipate yung laboratory namin. Okay, yung dynamics ng tao nag-iiba. So may research kasi kami before together with other members of the lab called crowd dynamics. So sa crowd dynamics, tingnan namin kung paano nag-i-interact yung agents o yung people kapag nag-group sila together. So yung crowd dynamics before, ang napansin namin kasi sa physics, if you study fluid dynamics, ang tao kapag naipon yan sa 1 meter square, tapos lumampas yan sa isang threshold number, kunyari lampas na 20, nag-a-act na yan sa fluid. So yung mga equations ng fluid dynamics, pwede namin apply. So ang ginawa namin before, naggawa kami ng project. Ang project namin in partnership with DOST ay Track Your Pope project. So ang ginawa namin, nag-deploy kami ng mga apps na ginawa lang namin, APKs. Tapos sa mga students, pina-install namin sa kanila yung apps. Tapos pinapunta namin kay Pope. Tapos parang pang contact tracing ginagawa namin before. Tapos tinitingnan lang namin kung habang papalapit ako ng papalapit dun sa caravan kay Pope, paano naapektuhan yung movement ko. So yung study namin before, ang motivation talaga namin is to study when people have like bottlenecks para maiwasan yung mga stampede. Kasi mula dun sa movement ng mga tao, makikita mo kung ano yung critical number, kung kailan sila madadelikado. So interestingly, we were able to apply this to different scenarios. For example, during January 9 yung Nazareno. So I think the research was really relevant when we know, okay, ganito na yung cluster ng tao, kailangan na ng support from MMDA. So, ang ginawa namin before we were able to do those algorithms, in-apply muna namin siya sa less critical scenario. So, luckily, magkakalapit yung events na yun yung Nazareno Day, yung pagdating ni Pope, at saka yung Panagbenga Festival sa Baguio. So, ginawa namin to test out. We made an experiment. We used IoT, so Raspberry Pi. Ang ginawa namin, naalala ko to, this was in 2016. Umakyat ako sa poste sa Baguio para magkabit ng camera na Raspberry Pi para kunin yung kung paano nagka-cluster yung mga tao. Tapos yung ginamit namin na data to train our models back then. Nakakatawa kasi yung DOST talaga, kapag sapat yung budget nila, ang dami nilang pwedeng ma-innovate, ang daming funding, relevant projects na pwedeng pagpuntahan ng funding. Actually, may student ako ngayon sa Escolabs na yung ginagawa niya. Parang we are doing topic modeling right now on the publications produced by our Filipino scientists and engineers. Tapos tinitingnan namin ano kaya yung mga topics nitong mga publications na ito. Tapos how can we relate these publications to national industrialization and nation building. So I recall na may budget cut daw sa science sector, sa research sector. So parang tinitingnan namin sino kaya yung maapektuhan nito ng mga researches, ano kayang vital programs yung maapektuhan nito in terms of our national development as a country. Kasi ako yung nakita ko ngayon in terms of my experiences and research as well before when I was doing research. Backward talaga yung Pilipinas ngayon. Wala tayong culture of science pa. Wala pa tayong backbone to industrialize para maging self-sufficient. Yung agriculture natin, wala pa talagang wala pang support na kung sa context naman yung Philippines ay agricultural. If you look at the number of arable land in the Philippines, masabi yung pa rin na okay, agricultural pa rin talaga yung nature ng Philippines. And yung isa sa project, thanks to data ethics then, we were able to use our skills sa data science to help our kababayans in the Bangsamoro region. So we were able to look at different features that would correlate to dropout rates ng mga students natin sa Mindanao. So looking forward for the next next data challenge, we're already thinking of how we can help based on the good initiative already. Yung lesson na nakita ko dito agad na ang laki talaga ng pakinabang ng open data, open science, saka open collaboration. Kasi mas doon na-flesh out yung innovation at saka yung spirit na helping and bayanihan, doon talaga siya nagba-manifest. So isa din sa project na naging busy ako sa past few months. I am a part of this global organization called OMDENA. So in OMDENA, we are a team of data scientists around the globe solving social impact problems, particularly partnering with NGOs around the world na walang capacity to pay for AI data science products. So we're equipping them with tools, we're equipping them with the best talents around the globe. So yung pinaka-recent na project na involved ako is with an NGO called ZAP. So based sila sa Africa. So ang ginagawa nila, I think similar to dun sa ginawa niyo, Doc, na sa dengue. Pero yung approach na ginawa namin, hindi ko gaanong kabisado yung details nung sa inyo, pero yung ginawa namin dito, hinahanap namin yung probability na yung isang area ay magkakaroon ng malaria based on features from satellite imagery, based from people on ground, kasi yung NGO ay may community. So marami kaming data na nakuha na images ng mga tao mismo ng locations nila. So ganun ka-granular yung data. And interestingly, marami ring tao talaga na interested na mag-develop ng technology for satellite imaging using machine learning to do those kinds of things. So yung ginawa namin, we're able to submit a model na accurately we can identify high probability areas using many algorithms. Ano na lang ito, parang ni-stack lang namin yung mga algorithms that work. We use spectral and mixing, mga unconventional, kasi normally when we do machine learning, normally ano lang naman yan, parang supervised, unsupervised. So yung ginawa namin medyo yung background din kasi ng mga kasama ko, mga engineers saka mga physics people din sila. So we're able to leverage the things that we know about image processing. So yung mga Fourier analysis, how can we find patterns without labels, yung mga pixels. So isa dun sa mga models na ginamit namin, spectral unmixing. Hindi namin kailangan na kunin pa yung water index, vegetation index. Bigyan mo lang ako ng isang pixel. Mula dun sa composition ng pixel na yon, kasing image namin more than around 19 bands siya. Mula lang dun sa properties ng pixel na yon, makikita mo na agad ano ang probability na magkakaroon ng malaria. So ganun ka-granular yung nakuha namin na results. And what else? So yun lang yung results namin. We're able to deploy this na, pero ini-improve pa based on the inputs of the people mismo on ground. So parang ano rin siya, two ways, hindi lang kami parang messianic na nag-solve kami ng problem, etong solution. So hindi namin siya ginitingnan na ganun, parang titingnan namin siya na ano talaga yung problema nyo, sabihin nyo sa amin, manggagaling din sa inyo yan eh. Tapos kayo rin syempre nakaramdam ng struggle, so kayo rin yung may alam kung ano yung possible solution dyan. So i-verify nyo lang kung nag-make sense ba yung solution namin at applicable ba dun sa context ninyo. I do believe the discussions for data ethics, social good, no, napaka-relevant na ngayon. So nung 2018 sa Europe napasa nila yung GDPR. Sa Philippines, I think maraming effort na rin tayo, pero infancy pa lang, kagaya ng ginagawa ng National Privacy Commission, marami namang efforts na sila na ginagawa. Pero yung takbo kasi ng technology masyadong mabilis eh. So kailangan yung pag-keep up natin talagang mas dumami ang conversations, mas dumami yung mga discussions natin on these types of things para mas maraming tao din yung maging aware. So I'm also like supporting a lot of organizations na ganun din yung paniniwala. I'm a member of Electronic Frontier Foundation. I was lucky to attend conferences nung wala pang COVID, nung malaya pa tayo maka-attend. So I was part of the initiative by Mozilla. So Mozilla Foundation, I was able to attend discussions about surveillance capitalism in Asia Pacific. So ang dami pang gaps na kailangang i-fill up, marami pang research na kailangang gawin, and we really need more people in this space para sama-sama nating mabantayan, maging gatekeepers tayo ng mga technological repercussions na meron. Isa pa dun sa sinusuportahan ko talaga yung Algorithmic Justice League, kasi yung Algorithmic Justice League naman parang napaka-relevant ngayon dito sa nangyari sa United States, no? Election, sakto. Nakasubaybay din ako kay Nate Silver sa 538. Sinasundan ko lahat ng mga post nila ngayon. So relevant siya ngayon sa US. Marami silang struggles, no? Black Lives Movement, Black Lives Matter movement. Even other countries, hindi lang naman sa Pilipinas yung nagkakaroon ng maraming rallies and protests. Thailand, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Philippines. Another organization that I really look up to, yung Data Workers Union. What they do, they study philosophical, yung sinasabi mo kanina, Doc, na they really look at theories on how we interact with technology. Sino dapat yung nagmamay-ari ng data in terms of defining data products as part of us, no, hindi lang siya products talaga, na may repercussions siya sa ating pagkatao, sa ideology natin, sa mga belief natin. Also, Data Ethics Philippines, of course, I'm really a fan of your initiative, of what you do with your mission and with your motto that data rights are human rights and that social problems are data problems. So, ayun, I always call my classmates, my students to submit. A lot of them are really interested. Yung tuwang-tuwa ako ngayon sa kabataan natin, Doc, yung mga students na nakakausap ko, whenever I give them an idea, lagi silang critical, lagi silang woke. Napapansin ko when something's wrong with what the government's doing, lagi silang maingay, lagi silang nagre-respond. So very active talaga sila. And I think yun talaga yung nature ng mga kabataan ngayon, kaya nakakatuwa. Even for my classes, I do right now, I give them options eh. When studying data science, I tell them na, okay, maraming possible applications ito. You can apply it to industry problems. You can apply it to social good problems. So, it's always majority sa kanila yung nagtitake ng social problems na track. So, yung nakakatawa na ang dami talagang sa mga kabataan natin ngayon yung gustong-gustong gamitin yung skills nila for relevant, socially relevant problems. I'm also part of this organization, the Computer Professionals Union. So yung motto naman ng Computer Professionals Union ay, ang motto ng Computer Professionals Union ay bring ICT for the people. So yung mga technologies na binibuild natin dapat bawasan natin yung digital divide. Na tayo, kunyari kapag nagka 5G, sino lang naman yung mga makikinabang sa 5G? Sino lang naman yung may afford sa 5G? Sino lang yung mga urban areas na magbe-benefit sa ganito? So parang tinitingnan namin yung technology dapat inclusive. Hindi lang dapat tayo yung nagde-develop, nakikinabang. I do believe right now that I'm sharing these platforms pala dun sa mga interested din na magpatuloy ng track ng using data science or science and technology for social good. You can look at these organizations, you can follow, you can even join them because I believe that collaborative innovation and open innovation is the future. Even the things the conferences that I attend abroad, inaano na nila yung mga problems ng mga companies before. Ginagawa nilang transparent yung mga problems na sinosolve nila. Ino-open nila sa public para makatulong yung public. And right now, I really see that we are moving towards a learning culture. Lalo na sa panahon ng pandemic ngayon, parami yung sa atin yung naisip yung kahalagahan ng continuous learning, continuous improvement ng mga sarili natin. Tapos, lang siya natitigal na after graduation, I have a career, I will go up that industry ladder and then like reach some position. So ang maganda ngayon yung mga kabataan no parang nakikita nila na kailangan yung ginagawa nila na kapag give back sila something. Kaya yung mga kaibigan ko, yung mga batchmates ko nung college, lahat halos sila kapag kinakamusta ko, hindi lang sila may industry job meron din sila mga side jobs na mga advocacy organizations na ginagalawan. May mga sarili din silang mga NGOs na involved sila. So, isa din sa project na ginagawa ko ngayon, part ng project ko dun sa classes ko na ginagawa sa Eskwelabs ay gumagawa kami ng chatbot. So, ito yung parang sample demo ng chatbot kung anong ginagawa niya. Napansin kasi namin na malaking problem ngayon yung online learning sa mga students. So, dun sa online learning, ang problema, hindi naman lahat ng kabataan natin ay may access sa internet. Tapos, yung quality ng materials na available sa online ay hindi ganun kaganda. So, yung naging idea namin ngayon ay paano kaya natin gagamitin yung nagtuturo kasi ako sa Eskwelabs ng natural language processing. Sabi ko, ano kaya magandang project na gawin natin na hindi lang academic use case yung ginagamit natin na para lang matuto kayo for the sake of matuto kayo. So parang I changed the curriculum of Eskwelabs to be a project-based learning approach. So instead of doing topics per week na kagaya ng ginagawa namin before na week 1, aral tayo ng Python. Week 2, aral tayo ng science, mathematics. Week 3, okay, intro to machine learning. So yung ginawa namin ngayon, parang dinivide namin yung bootcamps namin into sprints. So each sprint, ang ginagawa namin, kailangan makapag-produce ka ng end-to-end data science project. Tapos yung siningit ko na din, since ang bias ko talaga to do social good projects, I give options to the students kung anong gusto nilang track. May industry track at saka social good track. So, sa industry track, yung ginawa namin, we did customer segmentation problem na pwede nang apply sa generic company, kunyari e-commerce company man yan, o pwede rin naman sa client na NGO, for example, if may community sila, so pwede nila i-segment yung community members nila into certain segments. So yung objective ng project ko, yung last sprint na ginawa ko sa kanila, last week lang, kakatapos lang ng sprint namin last week is to create a study assistant or question answering chatbot to aid online learning for Filipino students. So ito yung mga tools na ginamit namin. Ako din yung bias ko talaga ay gumamit ng open source technology. So as much as possible kung kaya talagang i-promote yung mga technologies na ginawa ng community na libre, tapos malaya nating magamit. So ito yung pipeline ng chatbot na ginawa namin. For now, pa lang siya, prototype. So ang concept lang niya, may user na nag-i-interact sa isang bot. Yung bot ay host muna sa ngayon ni Telegram. So si Telegram, dito namin sinasampa yung NLP tool, which is the script that we do. And then the script pulls out data from the image recognition library, yung Clarify, at saka data from Wikipedia. So the way that we envision the chatbot is that I divided the class into 4 groups. So may mga students akong inassign for science, mathematics, Philippine history, at geography. So, inassign ko talaga yung importance ng Philippine history kasi sa panahon ngayon na maraming fake news in terms of how we forget history sometimes, no, kailangan ma-remind yung mga kids natin na, okay, these are the reliable sources that you can use to really study history. So, we're able to, also create a repository ng project sa GitHub. We will still like polish it and make it open to everyone so everyone can access the code. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing lang saglit to show you the demo.
Syempre, you've got 1,000 tabs open also.
So yung i-demo ko lang muna kung paano nag-work yung math chatbot na ginawa namin. So, di naman siya matagal mag-run. For now, sa Telegram muna namin siya sinasampa. So ganito yung itsura ng chatbot. So kunyari yung student gusto niya matuto ng math. Actually, hindi lang students yung target namin dito. Kung sino man yung like person na gusto mag-upskill, out of school youth even, they can use the chatbot to learn on their own pace. So if I click start, so welcome, I am Matt, the Matt, your friendly furry companion to guide you in your awesome adventure. So isa din sin-integrate sa lesson na tinuturo ko sa SQ Labs, yung concept ng human-centered design at saka gamification. So important kapag gumagawa ka ng technology, hindi mo lang siya ginawa dahil kailangan mo siyang gawin. Kailangan kino-consider mo na yung gumagamit ng technology mo ay human beings. So kailangan mo consider na, okay, tao talaga yung gumagamit nun. So for example, I'm gonna type, I'm Albert. So ito yung mga pwedeng gawin dun sa chatbot. You can search mathematical concepts, famous mathematicians. You can do compute, you can play, or you can use the play to review concepts that you have already explored. You can use help for some instructions and tweak the chatbot. So for example, if I do search, if I search, for example, who is sino mathematician? Plato. So dapat mag-run siya, mag-return siya ng, okay, sorry.
Baka Plato kasi is a philosopher daw. Kailangan mga
Oo, wala siya dun sa dictionary na build.
mga Euclid, mga ganyan, no? Or si
Archimedes.
Yan yung mga classical mathematicians.
Mga mathematicians, bakit ko ba naisip yung Plato?
Or si sino may mga mas recent, sina Dirac.
Mga Dirac Delta. So if I start it again, I'm Albert, tapos, let's search.
So this reminds me of yung work ni Stephen Wolfram, if you're familiar with Wolfram Mathematica. Wolfram Alpha.
Kunyari, concept na lang muna. What is algebra? Algebra. Ups. Who is Archimedes? So mukhang kulang pa yung training set. So kunyari, what is a square?
Yeah.
So it outputs the concept, yung image ng square, tapos kung ano yung ginagawa ng square. So kunyari, I want also to get the equations. For example, what is the perimeter, for example, perimeter of a square. So, ayan, i-output din niya yung formula tapos yung image na nagko-correspond doon. I think marami namang ginawa yung students na equations pa. Like, inisa-isa nila yung mga possible equations na gamitin. Like, ito, square, rectangle, yung mga basic for elementary kids.
Parang you have an array of answers.
Possible scenarios
that correspond to your question. Actually, the way sina Wolfram did it, from what I understand, yung underlying structure nila was a graph. So each node is a concept, and you arrive at the node depending. So kasi at some point mangyayari dyan, your entire system becomes a massive search engine. No? So brute force, and the way you get around the kind of the enormity of the data eventually is you need an efficient way of searching a big corpus of information. So Sina Wolfram, they designed their database as a graph. So yung connect the dots nung concepts depends on
Streamline.
depends on what parts of the node are traversed. And it's pretty seamless if you go to Mathematica.
Okay. I will look at it.
Yeah, it's very very similar concept. And I think yun nga parang you're touching on an interesting parang frontier here where there at some point, because of machine learning, the interface to a machine gets more human-like to a point na actually it's the same way with programming languages. Now, once upon a time, it was very very difficult to communicate to a machine, and then layers and layers of abstraction ang ginagawa mo. Like originally, it was what assembly language. Yun talaga yung you're communicating to hardware, and then writing assembly was very very terse, takes forever. So someone invented C, which was one of the most popular languages up to today, no? But even yung C itself, although it was efficient about, kasi yung parang yung C will compile to assembly, no? For some, it was also a bit terse, so they started, stacking more and more abstractions on top of it. So now you're at the Python level na, no? And Python is like written underneath that is some C or C++ code, no? And then assembly. And then on top of your Python, yan na yung conversational interface mo na, where you're basically writing stuff in plain language, no, plain English, and then it through Python it compiles to an array of answers. Pero underneath that is still the same abstraction. So imagine mo at some point, on top of your own abstraction, may isa pa, yun na yung
layers.
maybe a voice abstraction or a handwriting abstraction, so you don't need to type anything. You can just literally talk to your chatbot, and then yun, it filter down. No?
I agree. I think the future really is human interfacing na hindi na natin kailangan mag-Python sa future. Sasabihin na lang natin, yun na yung code.
Yeah, parang Star Trek, no? It's really, really awesome. Yeah, this is actually another domain of computing na it's not really new, pero I guess medyo nagko-converge din because of latest developments. Even artificial intelligence itself, no, it's not a new field, pero because of developments in other areas, like kunyari the prevalence of open source technology, the internet, GPUs, these are other parang parallel developments. Ngayon, naging mas viable yung artificial intelligence. Kasi once upon a time, you needed a supercomputer. You can only learn it from certain places, or you had to pay a lot of money to get trained. Now, literally, you can study the fundamentals for free, and start tinkering around, using cloud technologies and open source tools. So it's very very exciting, to get into that, no. Sige. Ano pa after anything you wanna? Yes, okay, go ahead.
Nagbago rin yung dynamics nung technology natin, kasi I remember when I was younger, usong-uso yung mga meet-up dati sa Makati tsaka sa Ortigas ng mga Ubuntu. Kapag may bagong release yung Ubuntu, nagpa-pizza sila. So dati, I remember I was part of an organization in my university before, yung UP Linux Users Group. So yung advocacy namin before, tandang-tanda ko yon sa lobby ng university. Namimigay ako ng CD installer ng Linux just to convince people to use Linux, walang virus, libre. Daming alternatives to do it. Tapos ngayon nakakatawa isipin na, okay, sa industry, parang standard yun kapag magiging network administrator, system administrator, you need to know Linux, you need to know Bash scripting language. So nakakatawa yung evolution ng technology kung paano siya na-adopt.
Yeah. So yeah, actually that's an interesting parang segue. Do you have anything else to show
Yeah.
or?
Uh, are my slides showing pala?
Yeah, you can
Like
see
the demo.
your demo.
So
Yep.
yung future ng project, I agree, we still need to streamline it. I just demoed the mathematics part pa lang. Yung mga students, they were able to produce chatbots for science, history, Philippine history, geography. Ako yung, kasi naging part din ako ng project, yung focus ko din talaga is to, for ano naman, pang Filipino grammar. Hindi ko pa lang tapos kasi wala pa tayong corpus. Dapat tayo training data for Filipino or even Taglish. So I'm still looking at how to develop that during my free time. But eventually the chatbot, how we imagine it, kasi ngayon nakasampa pa siya sa Telegram, kahit yung Telegram, konti lang yung data consumption niya as compared to like a full-blown like internet search. Mas maganda kung gagamitan siya ng technology kagaya ng progressive web apps. So eventually we plan to develop this next week with the students na i-convert namin yung mga code, yung mga scripts namin para ma-deploy siya into progressive web app. So yung progressive web app, hindi mo kailangan ng Wi-Fi, kailangan mo lang ng mobile signal to make it work. I already see industries doing this, kagaya ng mga low penetrated areas natin na wala masyadong Wi-Fi. So PWA talagang ginagamit nila din abroad. Yung motivation ko lang din to do this, no, nakita kong post kay Sir Michael ng editor-in-chief ng Flip Science. Sabi niya, with great power comes great responsibility. If you could do good things for other people, you had the moral obligation to do these things. So when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you. So shared responsibility, I think even sa concept ng ng privacy, ng ethics, I believe it's herd immunity. Hindi siya parang nakukulong ng sarili natin yung mga ginagawa natin. I think the way we do technology, the way we innovate is through sharing to other people what we do and helping other people with whatever we can give. So yung mga next kong conferences tsaka talks na gagawin. Sa Esquelabs, we observe ang laki ng jump na in-improve ng mga students namin nung ina-analyze namin yung analytics ng student performance nung nag-bootcamp kami ng topics per week compared to project-based learning. So parang yung mga students, they were able to do end-to-end projects tapos na-explain nila on their own through collaboration. So I have an AMA session with Escolabs to discuss ano yung mga possibilities pa ng project-based learning, kung paano siya ma-apply din sa work settings. Kasi I think parami yung mga tao ngayon na nasa work setting na kina-consider yung mga project-based approach or yung mga agile methodologies na ginagamit ng tech. So paano kaya natin ma-adopt yung ginagamit ng mga tech teams natin into other areas. So segue din siguro yung pista ng mapa ngayong November. I'll be giving a talk sa November 27. Yung topic na nire-research ko ngayon ay using OpenStreetMap features as proxy to socio-economic indicators. So yung ginamit ko ay network theory. So yung mga concepts natin ng graph theory, kagaya ng between centrality, degree, ginamit ko to identify yung labels ng government natin. For example, sa PSIC, so yung mga income indicators natin, kaya ba siyang ma-extract using road networks, yung communities ng road networks mo, yung number of establishments doon. Kunyari, how many Jollibee, how many McDo yung nasa area mo. Telling ba ito ng socio-economic label, ng profile ng isang lugar. So, yun yung ipapresent ka sa November 27. And yeah, that's it.
Sige. Dami mong shinare, no? So I actually have a lot of questions, if you don't mind. No? Maybe just to get into the groove of things, no? Let's work backwards, no? From the chatbot, no? I guess you're already showing what I would say the more modern way to tackle how do you teach data science, and you made a good point about when you switch the curriculum to project based, no, biglang gumanda yung yung traction. But that's still probably not the norm. No, most people will probably encounter data science from a very, very theoretical perspective. I'm not saying theory is a bad thing, no. But can you talk about this? No, parang lumalabas the way you were parang tackling the I would say the education of it seems closer to software engineering rather than just pure parang data science. No, do you see this as kind of a trend moving forward, as opposed to kind of like the more, I would say, theoretical, pure mathematical approach? Like kunyari, but what's the difference between kind of putting together a chatbot, from a components perspective, as opposed to, parang the typical path, no, where people learn linear algebra and, differential equations? Or is it the same thing, iba-iba lang yung stage? No, any thoughts about that?
Alam mo, Doc, nasa poll mo kasi yung cohort namin ngayon sa SQL Labs, binase ko yung learning nila based dun sa previous cohort. Nung previous cohort kasi, talagang ina-assert ko sa SQL Labs before, no, yung mga students natin, gusto nyo magaling na mga data analyst, data scientist, dapat magaling sa math. So talagang pinush ko na yung klase kong ituturo ay math class. Nagturo ako talaga ng linear algebra, ng calculus. Talagang from scratch tinuro ko sa kanila paano mag-multiply ng matrix, ano ibig sabihin ng transfer function. So ang na-remember ko nun, yung mga students talaga nag-struggle sila kasi yung iba wala talagang background ng calculus. Tapos nung tinuturo kong mga model sa kanila, pang game theory. So isa dun sa mga model na ginawa namin nung previous cohort, yung Lotka-Volterra model. So yung Lotka-Volterra model, isa siyang type ng prey-predator model na parang tinitingnan yung equation, kunyari may population ka ng rabbit, may population ka ng fox. So yung dynamics ng interaction nila, nung predation nila, na-model through differential equations. So sabi ko, okay, ganito siya conceptually nag-work etong equations. So paano natin siya ma-apply in real life? So sabi ko sa kanila, isipin nyo na ito ay pwedeng ma-apply sa mga marketing strategies. So kunyari, mag-introduce ako ng bagong product sa market. So you can use this equation para tingnan, optimize the probabilities of how your product will perform. So ang problem nun, Doc, kapag binalik mo kasi sila sa start, parang it will need more time for them to absorb the material. Kasi ang problem namin, yung format namin, bootcamp. Siguro kung mas extensive yung program, mas suitable yung magsisimula ka talaga sa from the basic, from scratch. So what I did for this bootcamp, I healthy mix ng concept ng own your own learning. So hindi laging si instructor, hindi yung education kasi na nasanay tayo medyo neoliberal, na yung teacher siya yung balon ng knowledge, magsasali ng knowledge sa students. So ginawa ko sa kanila, 1 week lang ako talaga sa inyo magtuturo. I-share ko lang sa inyo yung standard way of doing it, the concepts, the theory. Kunyari, hindi ko kayo tuturuan ng linear regression na implement yun lang kay Python, hindi pwede yon. Kailangan natin balikan y is equal to mx plus b. So anong sinasabi ng equation nito, paano ini-implement yung code, tapos kayo na mag-a-apply sa mga application. So 1 week, nag-focus kami sa theory, dinidiscuss talaga namin the math behind it, pero not so much deep, pero we give them materials to expand on their own, to own their own learning. Tapos the next week, bahala na sila. Like may mga mentors lang naka-assign sa kanila, pero dapat sa kanila magagaling ang solutions kung paano ma-apply yung concepts na tinuro sa kanila nung previous week.
Yeah, I think ano rin eh. Well, for example, if I base it on my own journey, I don't come from a math background, no, nor a computer science background. My background is finance, so business. The data science, quote unquote, came through work. So it was always very situational.
Applied.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's the better approach, but and of course, maybe time has to do with it. No? I mean, if you do the same thing for more than 2 decades, siguro naman, eventually you'll understand it. But I think I find that it's a big hurdle for a lot of newcomers into the field to just cram a lot of that technical know-how into one place. And then, because I noticed this also when I sit in panels, no, and evaluate proposals for research, kunyari sa DOST. There's a lot of really badly written proposals, is the first thing I will say. And it's not because the people who are proposing it are not knowledgeable. Pag tinignan mo naman yung credentials, they're very, very credentialed, very knowledgeable. But maybe it's a lack of communication. Maybe
Agree. Mhm.
it's hard to articulate the solution. And then usually yung mga fina-fund, well, lately anyway, the research that DST tends to fund tends to also be quite applied, no? Like create a system for this, create a solution for that. Or for example, yung malaria use case nyo, which is very similar to what we did in dengue. Um, it wasn't an issue of, okay, what kind of spectral bands do you need, no? It's more of, okay, what is the issue that you need to solve, no? And in at least in our case, it actually yung project namin in dengue wasn't so much curing dengue. It was more about now casting the dengue. So it was a data problem, no? And kunyari the issue was, well, the actual issue was the DOH data was delayed. Could you use proxies, no, to kind of nowcast the probable number of cases and deaths given a particular area? And then the fact that you have satellite data available, that's a convenient proxy. So, and then kung yun ang endpoint, ito yung starting point, whatever happens in the middle, yan na yung data analytics mo, yan na yung data science mo. So I find that a lot of people still definitely struggle there, no? Kasi parang depending on how they learn, eh. So what I'm seeing in what you're doing is you give people examples of problems that have been solved or solve or figure out the math within a problem set rather than teach them the nuance of a matrix and a vector, yung mga ganyan, no? Which they will eventually have to learn anyway. Pero as opposed to something very cold and clinical, no? But again, yun nga, maybe time is the difference. If you are in a proper university degree, you have the luxury of 4 years of studying something, baka pwede. But if you're going to study like bootcamp style, mga short courses, how do you cram that into one place, no? Sige, can I ask this question also? Because I noticed something about what I would say like the modern data scientist, no, as opposed to what I would call the classical data analyst. Yung mga modern data scientists, a bigger chunk come from academia, from what I would say proper scientific fields, and they're getting into industry, no? As opposed to once upon a time, you'll be hard pressed to find a physicist, for example, or like pinakamatindi na would be a statistician. Then they would join a bank or work in a telco. Yun yung pinaka-extreme. Nowadays, we have people coming from biology, from chemistry, from physics, joining mga corporate roles, no? And the bridge is data science. And one thing I find a little, well, I wouldn't say different in the sense, no? Pero if you look at like classical data analysts, the toolkit is, I would say, very standard, no? They know hypothesis testing, they know regression. So these are the typical parang toolkit, no, for any data analyst. Whereas if you bring someone, for example, like from a physics or a complex systems background, you try out parang different, parang more mathematical models. Like for example, yan yung graph theory. You mentioned fluid dynamics. Another parang set of equations that I encountered once in finance was the heat equation, diffusion.
Thermodynamics, agree.
Diba? So that seems to me a bit different, no, compared to the usual people who would who would apply just linear regression, logistic regression on things, no. So any comment on that? I mean, obviously you come from a physics background. How do you reconcile that?
Sa totoo lang, Dok, nung una, hirap din ako maghanap ng trabaho. After ko ng college, nung na-present ko yung resume ko, physics, kasi una kong trabaho sa telecommunications. Sabi nila, bakit ka namin i-hire? Parang academic yung background mo, ganyan, marunong ka ba mag-SQL? Yun yung tanong sa akin. Sabi ko, yung background ko po, physics, parang na-train kami as problem solvers. So kahit anong problem ibigay niyo sa amin, kahit anong tools man yan, kaya namin gamitin, basta masolve mo na ang problem. So parang dinidisregard namin yung tools sa una. So ganun yung approach sa tingin ko ng mga galing academe. Parang yung tools come second. Dapat una muna yung framework mo, paano ang sinosolve ang problem. So I agree with your approach. Pagdating ko sa field, sa telecom, ang una kong problema na pinaisip sa akin ay fraud detection. So ang ginagawa nila, mga rule-based algorithm na kapag ganito lumampas sa transaction mula sa standard deviation, very standard statistics yung approach nila. Yung una kong naisip, sabi ko, yung mga yung mga nagfo-fraud, nung tinignan ko yung transaction nila, very programmatic. So kunyari yung concept ng nakaw load, yung mga nagnanakaw ng load sa telecommunication companies, very sila, programmatic, ibig sabihin, every 5 minutes tumatawag sila, every 10 minutes kumukuha ng load. So nung nakita ko yung transactions nila, certain times of days, so sabi ko, parang may equation sa physics na pwedeng gamitin to use that. So naalala ko yung lesson ko ng thermodynamics ngayon, concept na entropy. Sa entropy, kapag mataas ang disorder mo, mataas ang value ng entropy mo. Pero kapag mataas ang order mo, malapit yung value mo sa zero. So ginawa ko, in-apply ko yung formula ng entropy dun sa mga transactions. Tapos nakita ko kapag or mataas yung order ng transaction, kasi kapag human behavioral analytics yung ginagawa mo, yung tao, hindi naman laging on the dot yung ginagawa niya na very measured, nasakto by the second. So, napansin ko yung mga nagpa-fraud talaga, may mga ginagamit silang SIM-box, may mga technology sila ginagamit to automate the things that they do kasi sila din advanced. So, ganun, na-apply ko yung nung in-explain ko sa C-level executives kung paano yung approach ko, nagulat sila, bakit may equation? Dun sa sa deck ko, sabi ko, wag niyo po isipin yung equation. Ang isipin niyo lang po, itong equation na to, ang ginagawa lang nito, hinahanap niyo yung pattern ng mga natin, mga customer natin. Zero kapag hindi natin customer, nagpo-fraud yun. So, ganun yung sentiment ko dun, Doc, parang regardless of the tools, yung advantage talaga ng mga nanggaling sa academic background ay mga problem solvers. So, kahit anong tools man yan, naaral naman lahat ng bagay eh. Lahat available na halos sa atin ngayon sa matter of just doing and executing it. Pero ang mahalaga talaga, gaano ka-strong yung foundation mo kung paano build yung pipeline mo ng pagsagot ng problem.
I think let's expound on that now. I think that's a great point about bringing a toolkit that's familiar to academics. However, the audience you're going to talk to are usually business audiences who would have and number one would be ignorant of these things, and second, you need to parang win their hearts and minds though. As actually not even talking about hardcore equations per se, no, just the use of data to monitor things. Minsan that's a struggle for a lot of companies, a lot of executives, kasi nga the companies have existed long before even without these models, and suddenly people are coming out of academia showing them na these phenomena have been modeled before, why don't you adopt it, parang ganyan. So kasi you mentioned this also earlier about not having a science culture or not having a science centric culture. Ano ba yung tingin mo malaking gap? Kasi for example, academics aren't really enjoying their lives mostly either. I read about lalo na yung mga nasa research sector, they really are not doing very well. A lot of them are working in really relatively underpaid jobs. The appreciation isn't there. And wag pa natin isama yung, I would say, anti-science rhetoric that you hear from the government. No? But, I don't know. Any thoughts on that? No? Parang ano ba yung gap na kailangan natin maano?
I think, Doc, isa dun sa malaking gap talaga is how do we develop trust? Yun yung natutunan kong lesson eh. I'm doing consulting right now, and a lot of the people, yung companies na lumalapit, yun yung problem eh. Ang hirap ma-convince kapag binibigla. So, yung natutunan ko sa process ng mga engagements ko ay wag bibiglain. Parang i-establish mo na ang trust by paunti-unting measures. So, kunyari, nung nasa trabaho ko before sa industry, ang ginagawa ko, i-deliver ko muna kung ano yung hinihingi sa akin. So, kunyari hingi yung ganitong report, sige, ibibigay ko muna. Tapos, sisingitan ko paunti-unti. Uy, na-automate ko po pala yung ginawa ko. So, ngayon may more time ako para gawin ito. So, I think it's really a process eh. Parang hindi, incremental steps yung pag-introduce din nung ginagawa natin sa academy before eh, para maka-establish ka muna ng tiwala at natama yung ginagawa, na sound. Kasi yung karamihan na meet ko sa industry na matagal na talaga doon, ang taas ng tiwala nila sa intuition. So parang mas dun sila kumakapit na okay, ang tagal ko na sa business. So parang yung utak ko naka-program na to solve this. Hindi naman natin pwede disregard yun kasi may some truth naman talaga sa experience. Pero ang lagi kong sinasabi sa kanila, let's just establish trust in a relationship na we learn objectively from the things that we do. And yun nga, hindi siya pwedeng biglain talaga, Doc. Ang problem kasi din sa mga ibang data scientists, parang ano talaga, parang gusto nilang patalon agad. Na pagpunta ko sa company, magmamodel agad ako ng ganito, ganyan. Parang hindi siya ma-appreciate ng tao, tapos masasayang lang yung effort mo kapag binigla mo. So yung recommendation ko talaga, start incrementally, parang dahan-dahan, introduce mo yung science ng culture. Kung pwede mong baguhin yung format nila, yung mga forms na ginagawa nila, yung mga methods na Socratic method, lagi nyo nang tanongin, saan nang galing ito, bakit ganito, why, how. So paunti-unti.
Yeah, I echo that, no. Although sometimes I wonder if the disruption needs to happen externally first, no. Like for example, ngayon na may COVID-19 tayo, a lot of companies have suffered because you can't physically meet. So
Sure.
those technologies that have been kind of emerging for a long time, like payment, online payments, and then yan, yung mga delivery, e-commerce, ngayon nagpa-flourish, no? But for the longest time, we couldn't get traditional retail business to move, no, to e-commerce. Kasi nga very entrenched yung like physical, parang brick and mortar infrastructure mo, like malls, and branches for a bank. Pero ngayon, those businesses that were reliant on branches are folding up, no, or they're suffering major losses. And now the hope is, pag may vaccine na sa COVID, things are going to go back to normal. And knowing mga past crises, no, they never resolve themselves quick enough for your business to adjust. At some point, you either shift or not, no. So parang yan, yung pressures coming externally. So talking about itong science culture, no, sabi mo wag bibiglain. But if you take it gently, it may never change, no? Yun, di ba? Parang, I mean, I came from banking, for example. I spent a big chunk of my professional life there. You tend to adopt traditions handed down to you by your boss. So if your boss was very intuitive, as you said, for you to flourish in that organization, you also have to be intuitive, like your boss, or else you'll never get promoted, you'll never get rewarded, you'll get fired or something like that. No, and I found that even within let's say a foreign bank where I used to work, I was in the minority. People who used data, people who used algorithms, and despite results, like I remember one of my older jobs, I was a product manager, and I was in a product management job, but I didn't have a marketing background. My background was risk management, finance, very quantitative. So I used what I knew, no? And because I knew, yung pa, isa pang advantage pa, before I took that job, I worked in the finance department. So I knew how the financial reports were being prepared, no? And I knew that was the basis of your rating, no? when you're evaluated, how profitable are your products, how fast was your growth. It's very, very numerical. So since kabisado ko yon, I knew what it took to actually bring, to get a good appraisal, to get a good rating. I think there was one year where I had the fastest growing products, the most profitable ones, but I didn't get the biggest bonus. It still went to, I would say, the political people in the organization. Kasi nga, yun nga, they don't trust numbers, no? They trust personality, they trust intuition, they trust politics. That was a very, very, rude awakening for me na, it may be mathematically optimal yung ginagawa mo, pero iba pa rin yung human behavior, no? And it's really hard to manage. Either your company is already data-driven at the outset, or it isn't, no? I don't know kung meron talagang transition, no? I've seen many companies attempt that, no? Mga past consulting gigs ko, puro ganyan, no? Doc, we're looking to transition from parang gut feel to something more evidence-based. Yan yung mga terms na gusto nila. Evidence-based, data-driven, implement some sort of do a proof of concept, demonstrate the value. Puro ganyan, no? I spent several years in data science consulting then before I started my own business. Puro ganyan, no? Do a demo, do a proof of concept. Maybe they might buy the demo, maybe they might not buy the demo. The problem was, kahit naman di nila i-adopt yung technology or yung analytics, they're still profitable. Sabi ko, it won't work that way until may disruption na mangyari. So, anyway, sorry to go on a tangent, no? Let's go back to you, no? Kasi parang from everything you shared in the podcast, ang dami mong involvements, no? You're like the Renaissance man for for social good. How do you get that motivation, no? Just out of curiosity. Kasi nowadays, even including Escuelabs, no, and there are others like FTW and women who code, mga ganyan. I'm not saying this is the real motivation, but the message I'm hearing from the market is, if you want a better career, if you want to level up in terms of your salary, even some schools advertise it that way. You know, the average salary of a data scientist is X X X. So that's why you want to study data science, no, and get a degree. So ano talaga, the motivation is really financial or monetary. And then here you are, which I can relate to. We're not doing it primarily for profit, no? So how do you get the motivation for mga ganyang projects, no? Or is it a different parang path compared to the norm?
I think, Doc, it's also part of cultural revolution. Kasi yung mga metrics natin ngayon, pang handed down sa atin ay yung metrics of success. Na kapag successful ka, kapag marami kang pera, successful ka pag ganito, ganyan. Ako yung tingin ko, yung mga kabataan ngayon, nag-iba sila ng measurement of success eh. Yung measurement, how we measure happiness, how we measure content, no? Yung lagi kong tinatanong sa sarili ko pagkagising ko, para kanino ka bumabangon? Like, what's your purpose? Ginagawa ko yung mga ginagawa ko ngayon kasi I do believe na teaching data science, teaching people to be aware, to be like evidence-based, data-driven, yung mga terms na ginagamit natin, can combat a lot of the things that's a problem in our society. Kapag yung mga kababayan natin natuto na maging evidence-based, no? Kapag naturuan natin sila ng data literacy, kahit yun man lang, no? Magre-ripple down yung effect niyan eh. Diba sa network theory, yung trust network, ang bilis na mag-propagate. Konting tao lang yung masimulan mo na maturuan mo ng ganyan, mag-propagate yan down the line. So, yung goal ko talaga is to really establish myself as someone contributing my skills as a scientist, no, for the benefit of the Filipino people. Kasi hanggang ngayon, kapag binasa natin yung society natin, we are marred by superstition. We are marred down by backward approach, no? Talagang hindi pa ready yung Pilipinas to be self-sufficient, and malaki yung capacity, capability ng science and technology to help the Philippines develop talaga. So yun yung motivation ko din, I see myself as someone na hindi masayanik kasi I do believe in collective. There is power in numbers, no? Hindi ko to ginagawa, Doc, na ako lang. Kung ako lang to, hindi ko kaya. I always do it with people na same ang ginagawa ko. That's why I coordinate. I do a lot of NGO work. I coordinate with people a lot because hindi ko siya kayang gawin na mag-isa ko lang. Ang motivation ko, kagaya na sinabi ko kanina, ang future ay collaborative innovation, open innovation, no? Kung gusto nating mabago yung system, kapag may nakikita tayong mali, hindi natin siya magawa ng mag-isa. Kailangan nating mag-organize to arouse, organize and mobilize people to do something. Because only through collective action, I see that we can change and solve a lot of problems that we have now.
Yeah, I think you're also hinting on, if you notice nga yung mantra ng data ethics, dalawang theme siya, no? Data rights, human rights, and social good are social problems or data problems. So even when we started the journey sa data ethics, there was always parang an element of activism in it. Parang in a way parang it's two things. One is parang the positivism natin is data is a tool that can create social good. That's the positivism. But there's also a negativism na, okay, we should not allow data to be used for, adverse ends that basically harm people. they seem to sit in very, very separate buckets, no? Kaya kunyari, depending on who you talk to, the ethical conversation is very different. No? Like if you're talking to privacy advocates, security advocates, sa negativism tayo pumupunta. And because parang left on its own, parang data is also becoming a weapon, no, that can harm people. Kaya ano di ba there are these documentaries, yung The Great Hack, The Social Dilemma. One thing I noticed about both films is parang there's a reluctance to admit, let's say in the case of Facebook or social networks, there's a reluctance to admit that technology is really harmful. May mga ganyan din mga tao like technology is neutral, depends on people, what they do with it. I mean, once upon a time, I believed that but there are technologies that are harmful. There are technologies that are designed to actually kill people. You cannot say those technologies are neutral, di ba? So ngayon yung tanong, parang I think the classic example is a gun, no? Yung mga gun advocates say na guns don't kill people, people kill people. But you designed a gun to kill people. There's no other use for it other than that, no? So I think yun medyo madaling isipin. But when you talk about something like a social network, like Facebook, where initially it was designed for people to share photos and keep in touch, there's a reluctance to admit that the way it works now, lalo na with the algorithms, is already inherently harmful, or it promotes discord, it promotes trolling, it promotes fake news, yung mga ganyan. So that's in the negativism side, no? And then on the other hand, itong mga work na ginagawa mo, for example, where you are applying, mathematical models to solve social issues naman. Parang yung nexus diyan is the data. I mean, how do you use data, whether rightfully or wrongfully? Parang there seems to be parang in dual opposition yung dalawa, di ba? I don't know if you agree with that. No? Na once you empower people with data, they now have the capability to help, but they also have an added capability to harm. So did you help society by doing that? No, I don't know. Any ideas on that? Kahit ako, I don't know the answer.
I agree, Doc Tigot. Nung undergrad ako, ang swerte ko kasi I was able to take subjects na hindi lang yung degree ko, yung physics. Nag-member ako ng mga organizations under social departments, anthropology. So parang ini-integrate ko yung mga natutunan ko before sa natutunan ko ngayon. Isa din sa mga natutunan kong concept, yung weapons of mass destruction. So yung mga scientists, kagaya nila Einstein, nag-develop sila nung nuclear bomb. Hindi naman nila nakita yun sa bomba nung una nung ginagawa nila. Naisip na, okay, parang huge amount of energy can be extracted by colliding atoms, ganyan-ganyan. Pero nung naisip nila, may dilemma sila, ethical dilemma sila, moral dilemma sila, naisip nila, o nga, no? Yung mga bagay pala na, yung science, yung tools na din-develop natin, dialectic, tapos yung science din sa concept in general, parang tinitingnan ko siya doon as parang rubber band. So rubber band na lagi naghihilaan. So there is this concept na always sila naghahatakan at kailangan mo lang malaman yung tamang balance, no? Nung just sa paghihilaan ng dalawang rubber band na to. Pero I'm really afraid na there will come a time na mag-snap yung rubber band na yon, tapos mag-disarray. So I think it's important for us, no, na mga parang guardians ng technology na kahit paano may alam to ensure, to be gatekeepers ng balance na yon. Na kunyari, okay, may mga taong gumagamit ng technology para sa masama. So we need someone to counter it. Kasi I think ganun talaga yung buhay . It's always a contradiction. It's always, kagaya nung sinabi nila Hegel, yung mga sociologists natin, society is always in a process of contradiction. Kahit anong mga evolution yung puntahan natin, these struggles will always be there. It depends on us and how, kung saang side tayo ng coin lalaro at anong role natin yung gagampanan natin doon.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the need to have that conversation, no? Because it's not a one-sided thing. The thing like I keep seeing again and again, and maybe this is just because the maturity level, lalo na in the Philippines, is still quite low. The data and analytics and data science, even automation argument, is usually driven by a need for efficiency. So you want to remove waste. You want to be more targeted at your outcomes. But then by closing the door on waste, you open up a Pandora's box naman of yan, improper targeting, or you can be efficiently unethical. Parang ganun ang mangyayari, no? And tuloy you wonder, no, whether we were better off not being that efficient in the first place and not having these ethical dilemmas. And then yun pa, parang triple hurdle eh. Hurdle number one was you needed to have the knowledge to use the tools in the first place. So yeah, your mathematics, your sciences. But now more and more people are coming out of academia and entering industry. So the knowledge gap, in a way, it's not closing, but it's medyo nafe-fill na siya because there are more knowledgeable people coming out of school, and boot camps are helping, MOOCs are helping. Next hurdle mo dyan is the technology hurdle. You need, in a way, there's a minimum level of investment, whether you use open source or proprietary tools. You need tools anyway. No? So knowledge is one, technology is another. So dun pa lang sa dalawang hurdle na yun, it's already quite hard, no, to bridge to get over those two hurdles. The knowledge, eventually, given enough time, maybe in more and more people will know it. But then they won't be able to do anything if they don't get like a commensurate level of investment. Like you need to work in a job for data science to work for you, in most cases, or you find a way to set up a business that somehow monetizes your knowledge. That's a tremendous hurdle to overcome. So ngayon pala, at that point pa lang, do you have the ethical hurdle? Now, okay, now that I'm empowered, now I have the tools, then I have these dilemmas. Kasi parang it's not something ethics is usually not the first thing people think about when they think about getting into data science. They think about improving their careers. They think about getting into these fancy, using these fancy methodologies to do things better. It's only later, when you've already gotten the most, parang the whole 9 yards of it. Now you have the dilemma of, okay, just because you can calculate a metric doesn't mean you should calculate a metric, because the outcome of that metric is really unethical. Now, like an example would be itong prevailing issue natin with, do we lock down the economy to prevent COVID, or do we open it because businesses are going to suffer? And if you phrase your equation like that, ang magkatapat dyan is economics and health, no? Even though that's contradictory if you think about it. Magkakaroon ng dollar or peso value yung buhay ng tao. Kasi do you sacrifice X trillion dollars or pesos of your economy? May per capita cost ka ngayon of saving 1 or 2 lives from COVID. And that's purely because of the way we phrase the question. I think yun yung problema. We're parang by default, yung final accounting natin is economic. Parang we reckon, let's say, may kasalanan ako nagawa sa'yo. The restitution is usually in economic terms. I'm going to pay damages. Apart from if there was any criminal liability, I'll have to account for that on a personal note, no? Kasi that's against the law, against the state. Pero when you talk about damages to a person, it's usually monetary. And I don't know what the flaw there is. Kasi at saka think about yung all of these projects, data science projects, ang katapat niyan normally is economic value, no? Like, okay, chatbot, how much more sales can I get because of this chatbot? Or implement a fraud model, like you mentioned. How much millions of pesos of lost revenue can I save owing to these fraudsters? Puro economic. But as you see with all of the social impact projects you see, hindi na economic ang katapat Actually, quality of life ang katapat niyan, or in other words, tao, no? So anyway, yun lang. Parang those are just my last few floating thoughts, no, after this conversation, no. Any last thoughts pala? I realize we've been talking straight, no, for an hour and a half. Sarap ng usapan
Mm-hmm. Ang recommendation ko doon, ang ganda nung nabasa kong libro ni Weapons of Mass Destruction naman ni Cathy O'Neil.
Yep.
Isa siya dun sa mga in-interview dun sa social dilemma. Ganun din eh, parang ang ganda na matuturing tayo sa experiences ng mga tao na nauna na sa atin, na pinagdaanan na yung mga dilema na pinagdadaanan natin ngayon sa Philippines. Kunyari sila before, na-experience na nila yung ganun, nagagamit yung mga equations na ginagawa na for profit, tapos parang na-disenfranchise yung mga ibang customers, yung mga bias ng algorithms nila. So ngayon, umalis sila dun sa system, tapos nilalabanan na nila yung system. I really do believe, Doc, na yung system natin talagang we need to do our best to change it. And to do it, we start with education. Ang laki ng lesson na nakuha ko sa libro ni sa essay ni Renato Constantino, yung Miseducation of the Filipino. Yung orientation kasi ng education na tinanggap natin sa Philippines, or kahit hindi man sa Pilipinas, kahit sa kung sa amang bansa, parang yung metrics natin ng success, ano ba yung successful, yung purpose mo in life, medyo hindi ganun kaayos. So kung maayos natin yung education, paano ba tinitingnan ang purpose ng buhay ng isang tao, para sa kanino ba siya ina-apply? Is it for yourself? Is it your family? Is it within your boundary, or to be a global citizen? So ganun ko siya tinitingnan eh, parang to continue us doing these projects, we really need to consider doing more awareness programs like these discussions and transforming our education. Magmumula talaga siya dun, Dok, eh. Parang if you want people to move away in doing bad things with data, with science, we really need to streamline our education system.
Yeah, and I think we need more people like you, no, who are in a way more outspoken. I mean, if there's an observation I have in general, no, but people who tend to be in scientific, academic, or even analysts, no, they tend to be averse to they're averse to being political about what they do. And the problem ngayon is, I think of all the fields, basta you handle data, it is quite a very potent political weapon, whether you admit it or not. No? And that's where the ethics comes in. No? You have to acknowledge the politics that you have in your hand, no? Whether you're politically inclined or not.
Dok, totoo yun kasi I really do believe na lahat ng bagay political. Kaya hindi lang naisip ng tao kasi kulang lang sila sa systems thinking. Hindi nila ma-connect na yung mga ginagawa natin, may repercussions yan, konektado lahat ng bagay. So yun yung matutunan ko sa science nung nag-study ako ng biology. Yung mga food web, lahat ng bagay konektado. Hindi mo siya pwedeng i-disregard, hindi mo siya pwedeng i-containerize.
Yeah. Okay. I think bitin to. We'll probably need another session to flesh this out. But I'd like to thank you, Bash, for really opening up a lot of topics. Really, I think the field is still growing. I mean, data ethics, for example, and there's nowhere near enough people who are number one, passionate about data science, and second, who are passionate about using it for social good. I think yung kumbaga sa Venn diagram, yung intersection ng dalawang yun, very, very small. There are lots of people who are activists, passionate about social issues, but they're usually averse to getting into hardcore data methods, no? And then karamihan din ng mga people who are getting into the field of data science and analytics, they're very averse naman to being political. And that's where the social impact happens, yung intersection ng dalawang yun. And, yeah. Okay. Sige. So, unfortunately, we have to cut it here, but we will definitely look forward to having Bash Yumol in another conversation. So this was yet again another episode of data ethics conversations. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and tune in next time, for another really, really fascinating conversation with our guests. So thanks, Bash. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc, and Data Ethics Philippines. Such a pleasure. Looking forward to more conversations. Thank you.